Hi, this is 3-Minute Poetry Analysis, and today I'll be looking at Sonnet 73. In line number 1, the speaker states, "That time of year thou mayest in me behold." What he's saying to the addressee of the sonnet is, you may behold in me that time of year, but you may not. Now, he's giving the addressee a choice. You may behold in me, but in some ways you may not. Now, what time of year is this? It's late autumn with the approaching winter, which symbolizes death. In line 2, the speaker is uncertain as to where he is in that transitional time period. Yellow leaves are none or few. He equivocates. He's showing uncertainty in the imagery. But in line number 4, he starts to deal with his death in a more concrete way. And he's visualizing it. Bare ruined choirs. Then he goes back to his childhood, where late the sweet bird sang, at least to his youth. So he's working out the process. He's visualizing it. He's using metaphors to come to terms with it. And at the end of Q1, I think he's really come to terms with it in a more concrete way. Because then in Q2, in line 5, he says, "In me thou seest." Now all of a sudden, you, the addressee, see this in me. Now what do you see? No longer a season, you see a day. So he's gone from a season to a day. So he's bringing it down into a more manageable time period. And he says, as after sunset fadeth in the west. So the afterglow. So he's sticking with this light, with this image, but then he's saying in line 7, which by and by black night doth take away. So the night comes in, takes it away, and night symbolizes death. So in Q2, we have you see this. Now in Q3, he then states again, you see it. So he's repeating it, but in some ways, he's becoming even more finite and more concrete with his imagery because now he's dealing with a fire. So he brings that lingering image into Q3, and he says, "In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie." And here it's a fire, the embers are resting on the ashes, and eventually the ashes will overwhelm them. And that would obviously symbolize death as the fire burns out. Now, a fire is, in some ways, a better representation of our life than the first two metaphors, because seasons are cyclical. Days and nights, obviously, are cyclical. But a fire, once it burns out, it's gone. So, through this process of metaphor, the speaker has reached a better conclusion as to the current stage of his life, where he is, and really, in some ways, he's coming to terms with it in a more concrete and definitive way. Now, in the couplet, he says to the addressee that you perceive this. So in some ways, you understand this. He's forcing perception and understanding onto the addressee. He's being very presumptuous, and I think he's trying to control the message and control the addressee for fear of abandonment. So he says, you perceive this, which only makes your love more strong. To love that well, which thou must leave ere long. So, your perception of me dying, your perception of me reaching that stage right before death, is making you only love me more. Because we both know that you're going to leave me at a certain point. You're going to abandon me. So I think here we have the speaker coming to terms with his own death, but also with that, trying to force understanding, perception, and feeling onto the addressee because he fears being alone.